Welcome tonight. We travel back, not to castles and knights, not to the thrones of kings, but to the narrow, winding alleys of the medieval city, a place alive with sound, yet always shadowed in soot. In this slow and winding journey, we'll slip quietly through centuries long past, listening to the rhythm of daily life, stepping into the shoes of forgotten tradesmen, and observing the rise and ruin of lives that rarely made it into the history books. You don't need to stay awake. For all of it, just let the calm cadence of time guide you into rest. Let us begin. Imagine yourself stepping quietly back in time. The air around you begins to change, growing heavier with dampness, tinged with the faint scent of ash and something more earthy, more human. The noise of modern life fades, replaced by the slow creak of wooden carts, the low murmur of chanting monks, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer striking iron. You are now in the year 1275. The place is Paris, or perhaps York, or Florence. Any medieval city would do, really. They each had their own rhythms, their own customs, but they shared the same smell, the same grime, and the same sense of compressed, crowded life. You live in a small, wooden home, narrow, sloping, drafty, 3, maybe 4 floors high, but not because you are wealthy, quite the opposite. The ground is expensive, so your family and perhaps another all live stacked atop one another. You're on the second floor, not so close to the waste street, and not so high that the roof leaks endlessly. You wake to the bell of a distant church. The tone is slow and deliberate. It doesn't chime the hour, but calls all of you to prayer, to work, to daily movement. Your room is small. The air is still. The shutters are closed against the morning damp. You can see your breath, even under a coarse blanket filled with straw. The mattress is lumpy, alive with mites, but warmest especially when shared. You sleep with your siblings, maybe your wife, or even your aged mother. Privacy is a luxury. Sleep is often interrupted. You rise and stretch slowly. Your bones creak in places they shouldn't. You're not old, but your body feels it. You are, after all, a laborer. You work with your hands or your back. Every day the fire has long gone cold. You keep wood only for necessity. You relight the hearth with yesterday's embers and dried twigs. The room fills quickly with smoke. Your eyes water, but soon there is warmth. You eat what remains from yesterday's bread. It is dark and rough, mixed with barley or oats, sometimes even ground bark or chalk to stretch it. You may have a scrap of cheese, or perhaps pickled onions. A small cup of ale, warm and flat, with flecks of grain still floating in it. There is no breakfast as you know it, just sustenance, just enough. You step outside. The alley is tight and slick with filth. It winds and bends like a vein through. The city. Houses above you lean so far in they almost touch, their wooden beams jutting from crooked angles. Beneath your boots the ground squelches. There is no pavement, only mud, straw, and waste. Human and animal. There are no proper sewers, only narrow gutters that run alongside the road, or sometimes directly down the middle. When it rains, everything flows downhill, including things you'd rather not think about. The smells change constantly. From the baker, smoke from the smithy, offal from the butcher's stall. It is an olfactory symphony, if not always a pleasant one. Your nose adjusts. Eventually, you don't notice. You are a tanner, one of the most reviled, yet essential trades. In the city, your work clothes are stiff with old residue, stained a permanent, unpleasant shade. Your hands are always cracked and sore, but you are needed. Everyone wants leather. No one wants to do what you do. Your workshop is near the river, just far enough outside the better quarters that the smell won't offend the clergy. You spend your day soaked to the knees, mixing hides with lime and urine to remove hair. You scrape, soak, dry, scrape again. The smell never leaves, even when you wash, even when you sleep, and yes, urine. Often collected from public jars left outside taverns or donated by neighbors for a small fee. It is your most important tool. You share the space with others apprentices, journeymen, older men who have done this for decades. You don't talk much, there's no time, and the work is loud. Only the slap of wet hides, the scrape of knives, the occasional grunted instruction. Lunch is brief. Perhaps a bowl of potager thick stew made of lentils or peas, flavored if you're lucky with garlic or herbs. Meat is rare. Salt pork on feast days. Fish on Fridays, when the church demands abstinence. You eat quickly and return to work. The city around you hums with life. At the market, a woman haggles for onions. A monk collects alms. Children run, barefoot and wild. Beggars line the church steps, their hands outstretched, their eyes dull. Life is everywhere, but so is sickness. You see it in the faces of your neighbors, the pallor, the cough, the way they limp or lean against walls when they think no one notices. The apothecary down the lane offers remedies of wormwood, vinegar, and prayers. You take what you can afford, and sometimes even that does nothing. By mid-afternoon, the air grows still. The sun is weak, but golden. The bells toll, again vespers. For a moment, the city pauses. You wipe your hands on a rag that only spreads the filth, and head to the pump to wash. The water is cold. You shiver, but you feel a little cleaner, a little less like your trade. As dusk approaches, the shops begin to shudder. Iron lanterns are lit. The last of the bread is sold. The fish are salted or tossed. The city slowly closes its eyes. You walk home. You pass a man with a torch the night watch, grumbling as he lights each sconce. You nod politely. He nods back. You both know he cannot stop what happens in the shadows, but his presence is a ritual, a comfort. Back inside, your family gathers close. The children squabble. Your wife mends clothing by firelight. You eat again more stew, maybe warmed bread. The warmth is welcome. You say your prayers start sometimes. If coin allows, you'll burn a little beeswax for light. Usually, it's smelly, made from animal fat. The flame dances erratically, casting long shadows on the walls. The shutters are closed, barred against thieves, rats, or worse. Outside, you can still hear the sounds of the city laughter. Footsteps, dogs barking, the faint strains of a drunken song. You lie back, wrapped in rough wool, the straw mattress sighing under your weight. Your hands ache, your back is stiff, but you survived another day, and tomorrow you will rise again. The rhythm of life in your city is predictable, yet never peaceful. You wake and sleep to the sound of bells, not clocks. Time is measured by divine rhythm, not mechanical precision. There is matins long before dawn, lauds when light begins to rise, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and finally each rung out from towering churches, their chimes weaving through the smoky air like a song that never ends. The streets, though narrow, are always full. There are no sidewalks. Pedestrians walk where horses clatter, carts creak, and pigs roam. Freely, you must always watch your step, not just for the waste, but for trouble. Pickpockets blend with the crowd. Thieves can't. A quiet language of signs and gestures is whispered in corners and behind stalls. A dropped pouch, a distracted noble, a merchant blinking too long in the Sundays or opportunities. But crime isn't always shadowed in alleyways. Sometimes it walks in broad daylight. A minor noble on horseback might trample a fruit seller's stall. The guards might turn away, or watch and laugh. If you're poor, you pray for justice. If you're rich, you purchase it. On feast days, the mood shifts. The bells ring longer, louder. The baker distributes sweeter bread. Wine flows more freely. Children run with paper puppets. Men wear sprigs of rosemary in their caps, and the scent of roasting meets dancers through the streets. Yet behind the joy lies hunger. A feast day does not mean food for all. The city poor survive on scraps, and what the monks offer boiled root vegetables. Stale bread, bitter broth. You may join a guild feast once a year, if your trade permits. You sit at the low table, served last, but the meal is rich roasted goose, stewed apples, almond milk thickened with rice. For that night you are fed like a king, but it passes. Most nights your dinner is predictable. Pottage, again, you know every version of it: leek and barley, turnip and lentil, sometimes cabbage and onion. You chew slowly. The broth is thin, but it's hot, and it fills the belly. In winter, you burn anything that will light. Wood is scarce, so you use dung, dried peat, and scraps from the tannery. The smell clings to everything: your clothes, your hair, your very skin. Your lungs burn with the acrid smoke. Still, you endure because everyone does, and in some small way that binds you all together. Your occupation shapes you as a tanner. You live in the margins of society, both physically and socially. You're needed, essential, even, but unwelcome in polite company. At Mass, people keep their distance. In markets, they wrinkle their noses. You have learned to accept this, to work in silence, to take pride in your trade even if no one else does. On market days, you sell your leather to cobblers, saddlers, belt makers. You haggle, you measure, you carry thick bundles on your shoulders. The sun bakes the stench into the hides, into your hands, into your soul. When you return home, your children run to greet you. They don't notice the smell, or perhaps they always have. Your wife wipes sweat from your brow, hands you a cup of ale, and says little. There are no grand conversations, just the comfort of routine. On holy days, you walk the procession routes. The city is swept, banners hung, relics brought out. The saints are paraded in jeweled boxes, and for a while you feel part of something larger, something divine, but even then the mud squelches beneath your feet. The bells ring not only for celebration, but for penance. The soundscape of the city. Close your eyes and listen. The city is never quiet. By day there are vendors calling fish, fresh fish, hot pies, candles, beeswax, and tallow. Their voices rise above the clatter of horses and carts dot, smiths hammer, bakers shout, children laugh or cry. The butcher's boy whistles as he walks. Somewhere a man curses his luck. A dog barks. The bell tolls noon. By night it changes, softer but not silent. Drunken singing rises from the tavern. Footsteps echo in the alley. The muffled sob of a woman behind closed shutters. The low, chant-like murmur of a monk passing with lantern. In hand, whispering the Compline prayer, even when you try to sleep, the city hums like breath from a giant chest that never stops rising. Falling, murmuring that sickness is part of life, there is always sickness. A cough that lingers, a child that doesn't wake, a strange rash, a swelling. No one speaks the word plague, but all remember your neighbor, a baker, has gone quiet. His shop unopened. You pass by slowly. The shutters are nailed shut. A mark scratched into the wood. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. You give thanks that it's not your house. Not this time. The church offers bomb prayers, holy water, sometimes relics brought out in solemn procession. You kneel, you whisper, you hope. Not because you truly believe it will save you, but because ritual is comfort, familiarity, rhythm, even. Death in this city has a place, moments of beauty. Despite all this, there is beauty. A stained glass window glowing in morning light, a street musician plucking gently at a lute, a patch of moss growing between cobblestones. The smile of your child as they trace shapes in the soot with a stick. You pass the cathedral square. Birds circle high above. Light glimmers on the stone. You stop just for a moment to listen as a choir practices faint notes of Latin chant, rising into the sky like incense, and then you return to your life, because work must be done. The fire must be lit, the stew stirred, the children hushed, the shutters closed, because life here does not stop. The inner life of a medieval world is shaped not only by labor and survival, but by belief that you believe in God, in saints, in demons, relics, omens, and signs. The stars above you speak in riddles, and the sky is the ceiling of a universe rich with meaning. If your child falls ill, you pray to Saint Blaise. If a thunderstorm rolls in, you cross yourself and murmur a line from a psalm. If a black cat crosses your path, you pause for a moment, just in case. You have little formal education. You cannot read Latin, though the holy words sound beautiful when chanted. You know stories from stained glass and wall paintings, the garden, the flood. The martyrs burned into your imagination through color and gesture. The priest tells you that obedience brings salvation, that suffering is holy, that your station, your poverty, your daily trials are part of a divine plan, and whether you believe it or not, you carry it with you like a weight or a comfort. The approach of nightfall, the sky turns the color of soot and wine, the city dims. You walk home more carefully now. Shadows press closer. The oil lamps flicker uncertainly in iron brackets, casting halos of gold into the thickening dark. The streets are emptier, though not silent. A woman argues with a man in hushed tones near the baker's. A group of apprentices slink down an alley, laughing under their breath. A dog darts between barrels. You hear a cough echo in the distance where, deep and too familiar dot. You turn the corner and see your door. The lantern still burns beside it. A comfort, a ritual. Your wife is inside, waiting. The children are drowsy, their heads heavy with sleep. You duck beneath the low lintel and enter. The warmth of the fire kisses your skin. You remove your outer tunic thick with the smell of work and the river. You wash your hands in the basin. By the door, the water is cold but clean. Your wife offers you a cloth. You dry your hands slowly, savoring the moment of stillness. You eat modestly, again. A turnip stew, sweetened with a little honey this time. A crust of bread, a handful of beans. You chew slowly, listening as your son recounts a story from the market about a merchant who dropped an entire wheel of cheese and chased it into a canal. The family laughs, quietly, carefully. Laughing loudly draws too much attention in a place like this after supper. You mend a leather strap by candlelight. Your wife patches a sleeve. The children drift into sleep. Your home is small, but not unkind. The walls creak. The fire pops. The roof drips faintly when it rains, and outside. The world continues. Sleep comes slowly. Lie down in your shared bed. The straw beneath you crackles as you shift. The blanket is rough but heavy. The warmth is shared bodies pressed together. In the old tradition of necessity, the candle burns low, then out. Your thoughts drift. You wonder about the new cathedral tower, still rising, about the city wall, and whether the repairs will hold this winter. You wonder if the Tanners Guild will raise dues again, if the baker's wife will recover from her illness, if next Lent will be colder than the last. But the thoughts grow quieter, and in time you sleep. Closing transition to segment 2, and so ends another day in the medieval city. Not a place of grandeur, but of endurance, of survival, of sweat and silence, of small routines carried out beneath wide skies and looming stone towers. A single soul among thousands, live by the rhythm of bells and seasons. You work, you wait, you pray, you sleep, and tomorrow the bells will ring again. Now we turn our gaze to a moment when this fragile rhythm was broken, a time of fear, confusion, and silence in the streets. In our next segment, we will walk through the shadowed days of the Black Death, when life in the city changed not just for a day, but for generations. The Black Death panic in the streets. Close your eyes once more, and let the city grow quiet. It is early summer, in the year 1348. You live in a small stone house in a growing European city, perhaps Florence, perhaps London, perhaps Avignon. The name is not so important. What matters is that the days are long and warm, and filled with the same familiar sounds that mark your life. Day by day, bell by bell, you rise each morning to the soft chime of the matins bell, sounding from the cathedral tower, muffled by distance and morning mist. The sky is already light. A soft blue blushes over rooftops, and the scent of damp earth rises from the streets below. It is, on the surface, an ordinary day. You hear the clatter of wooden wheels as a baker delivers bread, the voices of vendors setting up stalls in the square, a child's laughter somewhere behind your building, the soft bleat of a goat, and the grumble of a tired cart puller guiding oxen down the lane. But just beneath it, something else, an unease, a quiet that wasn't there. Last week there are fewer voices. The fishmonger's stall is empty. The fruit seller doesn't open his shutters. The usual morning rhythm feels just slightly off. You've heard whispers, rumors from the docks, from the monastery, from the market women. A strange illness in the south, something moving fast, a fever, a shadow, a breath that lingers too long. They say it came from across the sea, that it rode the wind or clung to ships or passed through the very coins in a merchant's purse. You do not know what to believe. You only know the city feels different now. You begin to notice the changes. Slowly dotted first, it is just absences. A baker's stall left empty for several days. The tailor's apprentice always singing at dawn now nowhere to be heard. A neighbor's door remains shut longer than usual. You pass the parish notice board and find it more crowded than before. There are more prayers requested, more names listed, funeral announcements scratched in uneven ink. The parish priest offers reassurances. He speaks of God's mercy, of the fleeting nature of life and the need for repentance. He holds services, more frequently now, though attendance quietly dwindles, and then you see your first plague cart. It is pulled by two men, one old, one young, both wearing long coats that have grown stiff from sweat and dust. The cart is wooden, its sides high. Inside, bodies lie piled in silence, some wrapped in linen, others not, the old man shouts, but his voice is hoarse. Bring out your dead. He says, no one answers, but slowly doors open. A young woman in a black veil gestures silently. The old man nods. The body of a boy, perhaps 10, perhaps younger, is brought to the cart. No one speaks. The wheels turn. The cart rolls on. The day's blurting becomes strange. The bells still ring, but the city no longer listens. The cadence of the hours is broken. Matins, lauds, prime. They blur together. Night feels no different from day. The sky continues to shift from gold to grey and back again, but it carries little meaning. You forget what day it is, whether it is Sunday or Monday or feast day. Even the church begins to fall silent. The streets are dustier now. Footsteps echo more clearly. Doors are boarded shut not by thieves, but by families trying to keep the sickness out. The smell of wood smoke and sweat is replaced by something heavier, something more sour, the scent of rot, of time paused and never resumed. There are no longer processions of merchants, no children chasing wheels down the street. The smith no longer hammers, the weaver no longer sings. Even the pigeons seem to have flown elsewhere. The city tries to respond. The city leaders hold meetings, edicts are issued. Quarantine zones are established, whole neighborhoods cordoned off by guards. Food is delivered. Sometimes, not always. It is said the disease spreads through bad air, so bonfires are lit in the squares. Smoke rises into the sky. Herbs are burned, lavender, rosemary, thyme, wormwood. The air is thick and acrid. You breathe through a cloth soaked in vinegar. As the apothecary instructed, still the deaths continue. Church bells toll for hours, then stop, not from mercy, but because the bell ringers themselves fall ill. Doctors walk the streets in strange costumes, black cloaks, stiff hats, and masks shaped like the beaks of birds. Their pouches carry dried flowers, their staffs push bodies away. They do not heal, they simply observe, record, occasionally bleed a patient, but mostly they vanish like everyone else. Inside the homes, inside your own home, there is fear. You wake each morning and count the members of your family. You whisper their names and listen for their breathing. You touch their foreheads softly, carefully. You clean the floor more often. You boil water, though you're not sure why. You sprinkle herbs by the door. You pray more. You speak less when someone coughs. The room goes still. A single fever is enough to turn love into distance. There are no more embraces, no more shared bowls. The intimacy of family becomes a risk. If a member falls ill, they are placed in another room. If you are lucky enough to have one, if not, you isolate them in a corner. You sleep lightly, listening, waiting, hoping outside. The cart passes again. Mass death, quiet despair. By now, entire streets are empty. You walk through the merchant quarter and see nothing but open doors swinging in the wind. Abandoned goods, bread gone hard. Sacks of flour split open by rats. Dogs roam freely. Some houses collapse from neglect. The once bustling tavern sits cold and echoing, its fire long gone out. The cemeteries overflow. At first, the clergy performed funerals, chanted litanies, burned incense. But that time has passed. Now the dead are buried in pits. You hear of monks who, unable to keep up with the burials, simply dragged corpses behind the cloister and covered them with stones. You do not know if this is true, but you believe it. Everything is possible now. One day, you walk past the central square and find a line of bodies outside the cathedral, each one draped in a sheet, each waiting for a blessing that may never come. You do not look at their faces. In better times, you would have gone to the church for comfort. Now, even the priests grow quiet. Some remain faithful to their duties, hearing confessions from behind a curtain, administering last rites from a distance, reading scripture by the sickbed until their own cough interrupts the verse. But more often they disappear. You hear that some priests have barricaded themselves in monasteries, refusing to open their gates. Others have fled to the countryside. A few are seen drinking heavily in alleyways, mumbling half-prayers, eyes vacant. People still pray, but the prayers are different, less formal, less trusting. They do not ask for salvation. They beg for survival. The processions have stopped. The reliquaries are sealed away. The statues of the saints, once garlanded with flowers, now sit bare, eyes unblinking, their hands forever raised in silent benediction. You begin to see new behaviors. Women lighting candles on doorsteps. Men carving small crosses into their doorframes. Children carrying herbs in pockets and muttering words they barely understand. Superstition mixes with scripture. Desperation becomes its own kind of ritual. The flagellants come then. One day you hear the drums, a low, slow rhythm, beating like a heart from somewhere down the road. A crowd gathers not to celebrate, but to witness. You press against the wall and watch as a long procession of men comes marching. They are barefoot, dressed in coarse linen, and they chant as they walk. Between every verse, they stop and strike themselves across the back with leather cords studded with iron, whip, step. Chant, whip again. They bleed. But do not cry out. They call for repentance, for purity, for God's attention. They say this sickness is punishment for the world's sins, and only pain can cleanse it. Some weep, some join them, some offer food or coins. Others turn away. You remain silent, watching, listening when they pass. The city is quiet again, but not cleaner, not healed. The plague continues. The collapse of ordered by late summer, the social structure begins to erode. The guilds, once pillars of economic life, dissolve. No one tends the ledgers. Apprentices are dead. Masters have fled. The butchers no longer inspect their meat. The bakers no longer weigh their flour. The laws still exist, but the courts are empty. The constables overwhelmed. The prisons, ironically, are safer than the streets. The rich have retreated behind stone walls. Their servants are gone, their gates locked. Some hoard food, others pray alone in private chapels. The poor remain dot. You see a woman selling her wedding ring for a loaf of bread, a man trading a leather coat for a single candle, children wandering wild-eyed, clinging to rags. The concept of neighbor begins to fade. The idea of community starts to dissolve. No one knocks on doors anymore. No one shares meals. The taverns are silent. You begin to speak to yourself more, not because you're mad, but because there is no one left to answer. Grief becomes routine at some point. You stop keeping track. The names blur together. The deaths no longer shock you. They are part of the rhythm now. Wake, eat, avoid. Wait, sleep, repeat. You have buried friends, family, perhaps even your own child. The grief doesn't overwhelm you anymore. It rests quietly on your shoulders. Like a heavy wool cloak you cannot remove. When you do feel something, it is not sadness, it is fatigue. Underneath that, a strange numbness. The turning point then, one day, the carts stop. There are no more cries in the night, no more bells, no more pits being dug. For hours, then days, and eventually weeks, the death begins to slow. It doesn't vanish. It merely fades, like mist lifting slowly from a morning field. People emerge from their homes, blinking in the sunlight. They speak in hushed voices, as if afraid to scare the silence away. They sweep their thresholds, open shutters, breathe deeply, uncertainly. The city is half empty. The markets reopen, but half the stalls are bare. Church bells resume, but the voices that once filled the pews are absent. The city survives, but it is no longer the same. The survivors, you are one of them. You survived. You are not sure how or why. You feel changed, as though time has splintered into before and after. You walk the streets again, but you do not see what was there before. You see what is missing: the laughter of the blacksmith's daughters, the scent of rosemary from the cookshop, the shout of the candle seller. Gone. You no longer fear death as you once did, but you do fear forgetfulness. So you begin to remember. You keep names in your mind. You carve them on wood. You mark the alley where your friend died with a small stone. You light a candle each week, not for the saints, but for them. And in this quiet act, you begin to heal. Cultural shifts begin. The survivors reshape the world. art changes, no longer only saints and miracles, but skulls, hourglasses, and grim dancers leading kings and peasants alike. The dance of death, they call it. A reminder that no one escapes, that life is fleeting, that time is not promised. Language changes. Proverbs grow darker. Songs grow shorter. Humor becomes more bitter, more cynical. Faith changes. Some grow more devout, others turn inward. New movements begin to stir voices, asking questions, doubting authority, wondering if the church failed to protect them, and cities change. Laws are rewritten. Wages rise. Too many workers have vanished, and labor becomes valuable. Suddenly, the poor have leverage. For the first time in your life, you are paid fairly. Perhaps you buy land. Perhaps your son is accepted into a trade. Perhaps your daughter learns to read. Amidst the ruin, something begins again. Closing reflection, segment 2, and so ends a season of silence. The Black Deather, breathless terror that swept across cities and villages. Monasteries and markets claimed nearly half the known world. It came quietly, and left scars not only on bodies, but on memory. And yet life returned. The bells rang once more. The bread rose again. Children were born and named after those lost, and in time people forgot. But tonight you remember as you rest in the safety of your own time, in a world filled with knowledge, warmth, and comfort. Let the memory of that long, silent summer pass through you like wind through trees, quiet, brief, and gone. The mystery of the dancing plague. You have survived the great silence. Now we turn to something different, equally strange, but not born of plague or fire. This is the story of a city that danced itself into mystery. It is the summer of 1518. The city is Strasbourg, nestled along the banks of the river Rhine. Within the Holy Roman Empire, the air is heavy with heat. The crops have been poor. The price of rye is rising. There are murmurs of famine. Tensions sit beneath every surface like a cracked foundation, just waiting to give way. But the day itself seems normal. The sun climbs high. Children chase stray dogs. Bakers shape loaves. And then it begins. A woman steps into the street. Her name perhaps was Frau Trophia. We cannot be sure. Her story survives only in fragments, retellings, and chronicles written years later. But what they agree on is this. One warm morning in July, a woman walks alone into the street and begins to dance. No music plays. No festival is taking place. There is no joy on her face, no laughter. She simply moves jerkily, rhythmically, her arms swinging, her body turning, her feet shuffling over the cobblestones. People gather. They laugh at first, assume she's possessed, or mad, or simply playing a strange game. But she does not stop. An hour passes, then 2, then 5. Even as the sun begins to set, she continues to dance. She collapses, sleeps briefly, then wakes, and begins again. The onlookers no longer laugh. They step back, whispering, wondering, and by the 3rd day, others begin to join her. The city watches powerless within a week. Dozens are dancing in the streets. Men, women, even children. Some twirl slowly, others thrash. Some weep as they move. Others appear entirely unaware of their surroundings. There is no music, no conductor, Only motion. Day and night they move. Some scream that they cannot stop, others say nothing at all. Their feet blister, their muscles spasm. They collapse and then rise again, compelled by something unseen, and still the dance continues. The city council is summoned. Doctors are called. Clergy consulted. Astrologers look to the heavens. Some say it is a curse, others a sickness of the mind. Some suggest it is divine punishment, too much sin, too little faith. Others whisper of spoiled rye, infected with a fungus that disturbs perception, but no one truly knows. Attempts at cure the city tries to help. They clear a space in the town square. They erect a wooden stage. They bring in musicians, hoping that if music is what drives the dancers, music might also soothe them. The logic is peculiar, but the time is desperate. So fiddlers play, drummers beat slow rhythms, flutes sound, and the dancers dance harder. They pound their feet until shoes fall to shreds. They shout, they sing. Some fall silent mid-motion, others collapse and do not rise. It is said that some die from exhaustion, stroke, heart failure, but the records are unclear. Still, the city watches. The rhythm continues. Days pass. The heat deepens, and still they dance. The number of dancers is now in the hundreds, perhaps 400s, though no one counts with precision. Some sources say more, others less. But the reality remains. Strasbourg has become a city of restless motion. Even at night, there is movement. Lanterns are lit to prevent falls. The council pays musicians to keep pace. The townspeople stand in the shadows, murmuring prayers and making signs of protection. Children cling to parents. Elders shake their heads. You live here, you see it. You feel it in your bones that something has come loose from the world's frame. It's not just disease, or madness, or possession. It's something harder to name. A tension long buried, now made visible through bodies that no longer obey their owners. Strasbourg was not alone. What makes this story more strange is that it was not the first dot. This was only the most famous, and the best recorded. Earlier in the 14th century, in Aachen, a similar event took place, and before that, Cologne, Metz, Trier, and even parts of the Netherlands had recorded episodes of uncontrolled, collective dancing. Chronicles speak of it not as novelty, but as madness. They called it Chorea Sancti Viati, Saint Vitus's dance. Some believed it to be a divine punishment. Others thought it a curse, a sign of corruption, or the result of invisible poisons. In each case, people moved and could not stop. Sometimes it lasted for hours, sometimes for days. In Strasbourg, it went on for weeks. Why? Even now, we are unsure. Modern theories, a gentle historians, doctors, and anthropologists have offered many ideas quietly. Carefully, some point to ergot poisoning, a fungus that grows on damp rye and when consumed mimics the effects of LSD hallucinations, muscle tremors, distorted perception. The summer of 1518 was wet and hot. The rye crop was poor. It's possible, others suggest, mass hysteria, called mass psychogenic illness. A psychological outbreak triggered by fear, tension, poverty, and desperation, spreading like fire from mind to mind. At that time, Strasbourg was suffering from famine, political unrest, and religious upheaval. Life was harsh. Bodies were tired. Minds overburdened. Perhaps the dance was not madness, but release. A cry from the unconscious made physical dot and sum. Say nothing. They admit that, even after 5 centuries, it remains a mystery, a fragment of human behavior that defies categorization. The dance ends one day perhaps, in late August, simply stops the dancers, for one by one, they do not rise again. Not to dance, not to explain. Some are carried away. Some simply vanish from the records. There is no grand pronouncement. No cure discovered dot. Just stillness dot. The music ceases. The square is swept. The stage dismantled. The city slowly returns to normal. But something lingers. A strange silence where rhythm once ruled. A scar beneath the stone. The chronicles note. The event, doctor's file reports. Clergy preach about sin, and time moves on. As the city resumed its ordinary rhythms, its tolling bells, its open markets, its quiet alleys, there remained, in some corner of every mind, the memory of that long, strange summer. They whispered about it for years, of the woman who began it, of the men who followed, of the flutes and fiddles, of the shoes worn through, of the silence that came after dot. Children were told stories of the dance. Old women made signs of protection when July came. Some swore never to touch rye bread. Again, but most simply tried to forget, and history, as it often does, softened the details. Over time, the event became a curiosity, an anecdote, a line in a chronicle. Later generations would doubt it even happened. Some said it was exaggeration, others metaphor. Perhaps it was something deeper, a glimpse into a moment when human pain carried too long, spilled out not in screams, but in steps, a sorrow that could no longer be spoken. Only danced what we know and don't know even today. We do not fully understand it. There are no plague rats in this story, no grand battles, no royal edicts, no earthquakes, just bodies moving to a rhythm only they could hear. Feet pounding, dusty streets under the weight of something unnamed. Science offers guesses. Psychology suggests patterns. History provides records, faded and vague. But still, the core of the mystery remains untouched. A single woman danced, and for a moment a city followed. Reflection and gentle exitanand. So, tonight, as your thoughts drift through time, and your breath slows to match the rhythm of the world around you, you might think of them, the woman on the cobblestone street, the fiddler on the stage, the physician with his puzzled frown, the townsfolk watching from shaded windows, not with fear, not with judgment, but with a quiet sort of wonder. For in the long story of human history, there are pages we can read, and others we can only gaze at through soft candlelight. Perhaps the dancing plague was not madness. Perhaps it was a kind of release. Or perhaps, like so many mysteries, it was simply what it was, a ripple in the calm surface of time. And now that ripple has passed, and your thoughts, too, may settle. As we leave Strasbourg behind, the music fades, the dancers step out of view, and the street is empty once again. Inside the guild halls of the merchant class, now we leave behind the crowded alleyways. We step away from the muddy lanes, the flickering torches, and the hurried cries of the market. and we look upward toward the quiet windows with glass panes, toward the painted shutters, toward the buildings that do not lean with age. We step into the world of the merchant elite, not nobles, not knights, but those who, in their own way, ruled the medieval city, not with swords or titles, but with ledgers, networks, and well-timed silence. The merchant's home you live now in the merchant's quarter. The streets are wider here. The gutters lined with stones. The shops are large, with carved wooden signs and metal hinges that shine in the sunlight. The houses rise tall, with proper facades, some even painted with faded images of saints or trade emblems. Scales, ships, hammers, or loaves step inside one such home. The floor is laid with smooth planks or even brick, swept daily. The smell is not of waste and rot, but of beeswax polish, lavender bundles, and on special days freshly ground spices from distant lands. The rooms are quiet, not because they are empty, but because everyone here has learned to speak gently. The children are taught to sit still. The apprentices work silently in the back room. The matron of the house reads by the hearth, her fingers stained with ink, not grime. On the walls hang woven tapestries, not grand or royal, but warm, modest, protective. They keep out the cold. And they say, without words, we are not poor. The routine of prestiges, Merchant's Day is ruled not by survival, but by structure. You rise with the sun, but not before it. Your servant brings water, warm if the hearth is already lit. You wash your face in a ceramic basin. Towel yourself with linen. Dress in wool dyed in gentle tones, russet, grey-blue, deep green. Your meal is light. Toasted bread, a wedge of cheese, perhaps a poached egg or a bowl of thin soup. You eat slowly. You listen to the latest news brought by a messenger, or overheard at yesterday's guild supper. Then to business. You walk to your guild hall, a building of heavy timbers and glass-paned windows, larger and more finely made than any shop. Its doors are tall. Its crest is carved above the entrance. Its meeting chamber smells faintly of ink, wood polish, and a hint of last night's wine. You enter, nodding to fellow members. Some are weavers, others are tanners, silversmiths, carpenters, or wool merchants. All are equal here at least, in name. The master of the guild reads from the register. Names of new apprentices, complaints, petitions for trade. Votes are taken by raised hands or by drawing. Marked tokens from a bowl. The matters discussed are simple but powerful. Should the price of leather be raised? Shall we admit the son of a foreign merchant? Should the journeyman who overcharged a widow be expelled? The decisions are not violent, but they shape the city. To be a merchant in the medieval city is not just to own a shop or move goods. It is to be part of a brotherhood, a guild. The guild is more than a workplace. It is a network, a ritual, a second family. When you joined, you swore an oath spoken in the presence of witnesses and often on a sacred relic. You promised to uphold the guild's honor, to respect its rules, to protect the quality of your craft, and to never undercut a fellow member. You were taught by a master. You began as an apprentice, living under his roof, eating at his table, sweeping his floor, and watching, always watching. Years passed before you touched a fine tool yourself. Later, as a journeyman, you traveled perhaps to Bruges or Lübeck, or Venice seeking work, building your reputation, carrying letters of recommendation sealed with wax and ribbon. And finally, when you were ready, you presented your masterpiece of work judged by senior guildsmen in a quiet room. If accepted, you became a master, a full member, a man with a vote, a seat, and a voice. And with that voice came weight. Guilds controlled prices. They regulated wages. They set rules for trade, for imports, for apprenticeships. They even negotiated with the city council to be part of a guild, was to be inside the walls of power. The merchants' day flows with predictable ease. In the morning, you meet with buyers, local farmers, visiting nobles, or church officials seeking candles, cloth, or tools. You weigh goods on a brass scale using standard stones approved by the guild. Everything is measured, documented, inspected. You negotiate, but never loudly. A firm tone, a steady gaze. Trust is your currency. Your name is your guarantee. By mid-afternoon, you walk to the counting room. Behind a locked door, you record debts and payments in a leather-bound ledger, each line inscribed with a fine goose quill dot. No one is hurried here. Every mark matters. Later, you check on shipment sacks of grain from the countryside, bolts of dyed wool, barrels of salted fish, dried fruit from Iberia, or fine linen from Flanders. You are not a ship captain. You do not carry the barrels yourself, but you control their movement. You know the routes, the rates, the risks, and you sleep each night knowing your reach extends far beyond your street. Rituals of status in the evening. You dine not by firelight, but by candle. Beeswax, not tallow. The flame burns clean, steady, and sweet. Your wife joins you. She is literate, skilled, and not idle. She manages the household accounts, inspects the kitchen stores, oversees the linens and servants. She may even run her own trade from a separate ledger under your name. Your meal is modest by noble standards, but refined by any others. Roast fowl with herbs, almond pudding, spiced wine, bread baked from sifted flour. After dinner, you may read not scripture as the priest does, but letters from partners, inventories, or perhaps even a treatise on arithmetic or ethics written by a Florentine scholar. Or you may host a guest, another guild member, a visiting trader. Conversation flows, never rushed, never loud. Names are exchanged, agreements hinted at, no handshakes, just understanding. And before bed, a quiet moment. You pass the family altar niche carved in the wall, a candle, a saint, a prayer not for salvation, but for stability, for continued order, for safe ships, honest accounts, and quiet days. Then sleep. Influence. Without nobility, you are not a knight. You do not carry a sword. You do not own a castle. But your influence reaches just as far, perhaps farther. You sponsor chapels. You fund bridges. You donate to the city walls. When the town council seeks advice, they consult your guild. When the bishop holds a feast, your cloth is on the table. Your name is on the lips of priests, judges, and poets. And when your daughter marries, it may be to a man whose ancestors were once knights, but now seek wealth, not war. In the city, coin speaks louder than crests. As a merchant, your name carries weight, not just in the marketplace, but across generations. You are not remembered in grand tapestries or carved into the friezes of cathedrals, but your name is written in ledgers, marriage contracts, deeds, and wills. It is whispered in council halls. It is inked beside donations in the margins of old books. It is remembered in the seals you pressed into red wax. Still intact centuries later, your children will inherit not titles but position. They will inherit letters of credit, relationships with other families, apprentices trained in your shop, and a place at the guild table. They will be born into order, not chaos, into protection, not precarity. And in this way, your quiet life builds something far greater than yourself. A different kind of power. You do not lead armies. You do not anoint kings. You do not wear a crown. But when the city is threatened, you are called. When a noble overspends, he borrows from you. When a widow needs justice, she turns to the guild before the court. Your power is not loud. It is not adorned with gold. It moves behind wooden doors, between quiet words, and in carefully balanced scales. You build a world where stability means safety, where reputation means everything, where time itself is measured not by drama, but by diligence. The comfort of rhythm. There is a rhythm to this life. Wake, ledger, market, guild, meal, prayer, sleep. The world turns outside your windows. Wars rise and fall. Plagues come and go. Kings change, but the shop opens. The books are balanced. The candles are lit. You are not heroic. You are reliable, and in a time when much of the world is ruled by chaos and chance, that reliability is its own kind of legacy. Closing reflection, segment 4. And now, as we gently close the heavy wooden door of the merchant's home, as we extinguish the beeswax candle and fold the ledger closed, we leave behind this world of quiet structure, of modest luxury, of influence earned by discipline, not conquest. Tonight, we've wandered through the full circle of city life. We've crouched in muddy alleys and climbed spiral staircases. We've survived plague. We've watched mystery dance in the streets. And now, we rest in the soft shadows of order. You've seen what it was to live in a medieval city, not for an hour or a day, but as one who belonged to it. And though the sounds have faded and the people are long gone, their rhythms remain echoing, gently across time, inviting us to remember and to rest, a tapestry of guilds. Not all guilds were the same. Some governed crafts like the coopers who built barrels, the smiths who forged tools, or the weavers who turned wool into warmth. Others were merchant guilds, vast and layered, managing distant caravans, sea routes, and complex webs of trade that stretched across kingdoms. There were major guilds, wealthy, powerful, politically connected, and minor guilds, smaller, tighter, sometimes just a handful of men, proud but modest. Each had its banner, its colors, its rituals. Guild members marched in city processions, carried candles in religious festivals, and gathered in long halls, filled with carved benches and oil lamps beneath painted beams or vaulted ceilings. You might sit beside a wool merchant from Ghent, a fish trader from Bruges, a shoemaker from Prague. Your hands might be stained with ink or glue or dye, stain telling a different story, but in that hall you were equals, bound by oaths, trusted by record, and guided by custom. The role of women in the merchant class, though they rarely held office in guilds. Women were present quietly, steadily, shaping the rhythms of merchant life. A widow, upon her husband's death, could inherit the business. She might manage shops, collect payments, even negotiate contracts. Some women were respected for their skill, particularly in cloth, brewing, or apothecary work behind closed doors. They maintained the balance of the household economy, supervising servants, managing inventories, recording small debts and loans. A merchant's wife was not idle. She was a custodian of reputation, a manager of relationships, and a quiet guide in the social labyrinth of the city. And if her family had daughters, they were taught to read, to account, and sometimes, though rarely, to speak Latin or French. They would marry into other merchant families, binding houses together like stitches in a cloak, a web of trade across continents. Your business does not end at your door. In your ledgers are notes of ships docked in Barcelona, Genoa, London, and Lubeck. You invest in caravans that cross the Alps, reaching the cities of the Rhone, the Danube, the Po. Your cloth is dyed with woad grown in France, or indigo smuggled from the Levant. Your spices, cinnamon, pepper, cloves, in wooden boxes sealed with wax and wrapped in thick linen. You may never see the sea. You may never leave your city, but your coin travels the world, and when a letter arrives from a partner in a far-off port, its paper soft, its script unfamiliar. Read it by candlelight, your fingers resting lightly on the signature. You are not a sailor, but you understand the wind. The architecture of power there, world around you, reflects your station. Your home has glass windows, small panes, bubbled and wavy, but clear enough to catch the light. Your walls are plastered and lime-washed, not bare. Timber dot. In your parlor hangs a panel painting of a saint or patron. On a shelf rests a clasped book, perhaps a psalter or a prayer book copied by a scribe in a nearby abbey. You have locks on your doors and perhaps even a metal box with a key. Children sleep in narrow beds. Your hall is warmed by a central hearth. Your servants wear livery. Your food is served on glazed ceramics, not rough trenchers. You host visitors, men from other cities, sometimes accompanied by monks, scholars, or even minor nobles. They speak, carefully, eyes tracing your room. You serve them warm wine and soft bread, and they understand that though your name is not carved in stone, your roots run deep into the city's soil. The guild's annual feast each year. Your guild holds a feast. The long tables are covered in white linen. Candles line the center. The dishes arrive slowly. Stewed fruits, roasted fowl, spiced pastes of almond and honey, bowls of greens, slices of salted meat. Wine is passed. Stories are told. The apprentices serve the meal, eager for praise. The older masters raise toasts to the founders, to good trade, to surviving another year. There is music, perhaps a pipe, a lute, a quiet drum. There is laughter, though never raucous, and when the night ends, prayers are spoken. A scribe records the names of the attendees. A candle is lit for those who died, and a new year begins. Legacy and memory. And now, in your later years, your work slows. You no longer walk to the hall each morning. You sit by the hearth, running your fingers over old ledgers, pages softened by time. You trace names you once mentored. You remember markets now long gone, ships that never returned, letters from men long buried. You feel pride not in wealth, but in continuity. Your sons work in your place. Your daughters write their names with clear hands. Your house still stands. Your shop still opens. Your name still spoken quietly with respect. You think often of rhythm, of routine, of time itself, counted not in seasons, but in contracts, apprenticeships and coin. And one evening, as the bells toll, Compline and the city lights flicker one by one, you feel peace, not triumph, not joy, just peace. The work is done. The city around you does not thrive by luck. It thrives by design, and that design is not imperial, it is not royal. It is urban, commercial, and communal. The streets are laid with logic, the districts mapped by trade, the neighborhoods layered by skill, status, and age. In the North Quarter, the dyers soak cloth in steaming vats of color. The river carries waste, yes, but also movement linking weavers to traders, fullers to finishers, tanners to saddle makers. Elsewhere, bakers rise before dawn to knead and stoke their ovens, their guild marking every loaf with regulated weight and price. The butchers' stalls lie together in a square tiled with stone, so that blood does not pool in the streets. Overhead, chimneys curl, smoke in perfect rhythm. Behind shop doors, scales and measures are locked in drawers and subject to inspection. Even noise is regulated. Bellmakers must test their metal outside city walls. Tanners are assigned zones away from the cathedral. You live in a city not of spires and swords, but of precision. Seasons in a merchant's lifetime flows not only through hours and bells, but through seasons. Each brings a shift in labor, pace, and ritual. In spring, merchants prepare for fairs' long journeys to central markets like Champagne, Frankfurt, or St. Denis. Goods are loaded into wagons, wool, flax, wax, dried fruit, cheese wrapped in cloth, sacks of grain, and barrels of salted meat. In summer, the city swells with activity. Ships arrive from the north with dried cod, iron tools, Baltic furs. From the south come spices, oil, and ink. Streets grow loud with languages, German, French, Italian, Low Dutch. In autumn, accounts are settled, debt called in, ledgers balanced, contracts renewed, and in winter the world softens. Fires burn longer, cloth is mended, tools sharpened, apprentices recite their lessons by firelight. Merchants walk more slowly, their cloaks drawn tight, their minds turned to household affairs and civic duties. There is no boredom, only rhythm. Banking and credit. Trust in inking, your locked chest lies not gold, but paper, notes, seals, letters of credit, parchments with signatures, marks, wax crests, and numbers written in delicate script. You understand something powerful, that money can move without being touched. If a merchant from Florence owes you 50 livres and he has an agent, in Paris you need not see a coin, only a letter signed acknowledging debt, and in return your agent receives payment elsewhere. This is trust codified, a system invisible but more powerful than steel. You are not a banker, but you use banks. You understand risk, delay, exchange rates, inflation. You know the value of reputation. A single missed payment could stain your name for years. a misplaced decimal. Even more dot, you do not gamble. You calculate the years pass like quiet guests. Each season arrives with the same worn sandals, the same sky shifts, the same market patterns. But you notice that the pace has slowed, not the cities your own. You are no longer needed in the counting room each morning. The ledgers are tended by your eldest son, whose hand is firmer than yours now. The apprentices no longer startle when you walk in. They bow respectfully, but their eyes are on his movements, not yours, and that is as it should be. You sit in the shop's upper chamber, where the window faces the street. The pane is small and bubbled, but you can still see the square. You watch the carts, the dogs, the wide skirts and cloaked figures. Weaving through the morning cold dot below, the bell rings. A customer, another day begins. The apprentice here 17. His name is Thomas. He arrived 5 years ago, a boy in patched shoes, carrying a satchel with 2 shirts and a note from his uncle, sealed with green wax. He spoke little, listened well, worked silently. You taught him to boil glue from raw hide, to sand the edge of boards until smooth as silk, to check the brass weights against the gilt scale, and not trust his eye alone. You scolded him once for cutting corners. He never did it again. Now he speaks more. He smiles sometimes. He stays late to clean. And you have caught him once, or twice, copying lines from your ledgers into his own book. You say nothing, but inside you feel a small ember of pride. One day he will ask for permission to travel. He will leave for Bruges or Basel or York. He will return with stories and prices and worn boots, and perhaps with enough promise to craft his own seal. That too is as it should be. The cycle of feast and holy daisy then, now the rhythm of the year, is marked not just by sales or shipments, but by feasts, fasts, and festivals. In Advent the colors change. Purple banners are draped over church altars. The markets dim. The streets grow quieter. There is no meat, no song. The city exhales, and then Christmas. The bells toll longer. Bread is baked with dried fruit and honey. Candles are lit on window ledges. Children sing in the street, and no one shoos them away. In Lent, the shops sell herbs and salted fish. You walk more slowly. You listen to the priest's sermons more closely. You light a candle for your brother, gone these 10 winters. On midsummer, the guild sponsors a procession. You wear your best tunic, stitched with faded crimson trim. You walk behind the banner with your fellow masters. The sun is high, the air thick with rose water and dust. You return home exhausted, but smiling, because even after all these years, you still belong. A night walk one night, unable to sleep. You rise from bed. The fire is dying. You add a log. It hisses, then calms. The room flickers. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders and step into the night. The street is silent. Only the coalsmith's chimney glows in the distance. The moon is full, its light soft on the stones. You walk without purpose, past the dye house, past the shuttered baker, past the fountain where the children play in summer dot. You sit on the edge of a stone planter beneath a crooked wooden sign shaped like a fish. The air smells of cold clay and soot. You close your eyes. You remember your first day in the city, your satchel staring at the tiled roof lines, the unfamiliar dialects, the towers overhead. It all felt so vast. And now it feels like home, a place shaped not by walls, but by repetition. Memory becomes structure. Each day now folds into the next like pages of a book you've read many times, yet never tire of. The wood grain of the shop's door frame beneath your fingers, the sound of the scales being unhooked, the dusty scent of the binding cloth, the feel of the bench worn by years of sitting, of watching. You do less now, but you see more. The city has not changed much, but you have. You are softer, slower, but not faded. You still know every account, every price, every shortcut down the side street where the carts don't rattle so loud. And when you hear the bell ring each morning, it still feels like a kind of music to be. Remembered without monuments, you will not be carved into marble. You will not be sung in ballads, but your house will remain. Your books will be passed down. Your apprentices will speak of your patience, your insistence on quality, your habit of humming when you trimmed the ledgers, and when a new master hangs his sign above your door. He will leave your name carved into the stone lintel just beneath the year of founding. Not large, but not forgotten. The last ledger, the pages of your final ledger, are few now. The script is smaller, more careful, the ink lighter, the lines straighter. There are no debts listed, no incoming orders, just names, notes, quiet thoughts, a letter from your cousin in Antwerp, a new shop sign painted with your grandson's name, a donation to repair the city gate, the candle bill from the cathedral. On the last page you write nothing, just a mark, your seal pressed into soft wax, and beneath it the words, Dio gratias, thanks be to God. You close the book, and do not open another. The city sleeps, the city itself has grown older with you. The houses lean more heavily on one another. The cobblestones are rounded smooth by centuries of feet. The air smells of hay and stone and memory. Children run through the same alleys their parents once did. The Guildhall doors still creak open at dawn. The bells still chime the hours. But the streets are quieter now, quieter than you remember. Or perhaps you've simply learned to listen more closely. You walk those streets one last time, not with urgency, but with familiarity. You pause to feel the grain of a door frame you helped repair 30 years ago. You nod to a shopkeeper whose father once trained under you. You stop before your old Guildhall and press your hand to the wood. It is smoother than you remember, but still solid. You turn and walk home, a house of shadows and light. Your home no longer bustles, but it is not empty. The fire crackles softly. A cat sleeps on the bench. A candle flickers beside a page of half-finished embroidery. Your wife hums to herself in the next room. You sit by the window. The sky is grey. The rain has begun, light, even steady. You smile. Everything is as it should be. Time softens all things in the end. Even time becomes gentle. The rough years of hardship, of sharp corners, of ambition and burden, fade into a memory of rhythm. You do not remember every number, every name, every contract, but you remember the feel of linen as it folds, the crack of wax when a seal breaks, the sigh of a customer receiving exactly what they asked for, the laughter of children during midsummer, the silence of winter snow falling past candlelight, In that remembering, there is no need for more. You lean back, you close your eyes, you exhale. The forgotten trades of the medieval city. Not every man in the medieval city wore a guild badge. Not every woman tended a shop. Not every name was listed in the ledgers of cloth halls or merchant courts. Some trades faded between the lines. Quiet hands doing quiet work. Unsung, unrecorded, but never unneeded. Tonight we walk not into the grand hall, but into the back alley. Not to the counting room, but to the stable door. Not to the candlelit church nave, but to the shadows that held it up. These are the forgotten trades. The lime burner you smell him before you see him. The lime burner works outside the city walls, where the smoke is thick and bitter. His job to take raw stone and heat it in great roaring kilns until it becomes lime, the substance used in mortar, whitewash, and tanning. He works with fire and ash. He sleeps near the kiln. His lungs carry soot. His hands are scarred by years of lifting stone and shoveling coal. Few greet him, fewer thank him. Yet every stone building in the city rests on his labor. When you see a clean white wall, know that it was first carved by fire, the plaster inside the city. After the lime cools, the plasterer takes over. He moves silently through homes and churches, mixing sand, water, and lime into a smooth, creamy paste. He spreads it with wooden floats and metal blades, covering rough timber, sealing drafty joints, smoothing away the chaos of raw construction. When he finishes, the walls feel like stone, and when the walls are painted with saints, vines, or heraldry, they cling to his work. No one remembers the plasterer, only the image painted over his labor dot, but beneath the color, his hand remains. The bell roperin, the cathedral tower above the city, lives a man few see. He is the bell roper. His task is simple. Pull the heavy rope at each canonical hour, not too fast, not too slow, so that the rhythm of prayer flows evenly across the rooftops. He lives with the bells. He eats beside them. He sleeps under their shadows. His hearing fades early. His arms ache, but his duty is constant, and his timing becomes the city's when you hear the bells at dawn or dusk. It is his quiet hands that keep you anchored to time, the rag-pickered down below. Near the poorer quarter, another figure moves through the morning mist. The rag-picker, she gathers cloth scraps, worn linens, old wool things no one else wants. She sells them to paper makers, cloth patchers, and even candle makers who dip them in tallow for kindling. Her sack is never empty. Her coat patched beyond recognition. She hums to herself as she walks. And when she knocks, some give her scraps, some bread, some nothing at all. She says little, but her work ensures that even waste is not wasted. The Tyler look, upward roofs, stretch in rose orange, grey-brown, made of clay tiles, each laid by hand. The tiler works at a dangerous height, balancing on steep angles with bundles of tile tied to his back. He hammers wooden pegs into beams, slides each tile into place, seals them with pitch or plaster. His work is never seen from the street, only from above by ravens, chimney smoke, and angels. When storms roll in, his skill is tested, and when the house stays dry, no one thinks of him, but when it leaks, his name is remembered quickly. The leech collector far outside the city, near the still waters of a marsh works a man no one misses when he's gone. He is the leech collector each morning. He wades barefoot into the cold, dark shallows. He carries a clay pot and a curved wooden staff. Around his ankles, dozens of leeches attach, sensing warmth, movement, life. He stands still, patient. When his legs are covered, he pulls free the leeches one by one and drops them into the pot. Some are sold to barbers, others to apothecaries, some even to monks. They are used in bloodletting, one of the oldest and most persistent forms of healing. His legs are pocked with scars. His home smells of water and iron. His fingers are always cold, but his work, though grim, is known by every healer in town. They may not speak his name, but when they whisper of balance in the blood, he is the one who found it. The lantern boyas, the sun begins to set. You may hear the soft tapping of a staff against the cobblestones. A gentle rhythm, not loud enough to disturb, but just enough to remind the lantern boy is coming. He carries a pole with a wick at one end and a small leather pouch of oil at his waist. His job is to light the city lamp-iron sconces, mounted 2 posts and walls one by one. As the sky dims, he is usually no more than 12 years old, quick-footed, silent, reliable by the time true night falls. His work is done, and when you pass a lit lamp on your walk home, its glow soft on the stone. You are walking in his care, the millstone dresser in the grinding room of a city mill, surrounded by the scent of flour and the drone of turning gears. Another worker labors in stillness. The millstone dresser, his job is to sharpen stone. A millstone that grinds grain wears smooth over time. Without fresh grooves, the grain won't break it, will flatten, the flour will spoil, the bread will collapse. So, with a hammer and chisel, the dresser recarves the lines delicate, spiral cuts etched into the stone's surface. His work must be precise. Too shallow, and the grain slips through. Too deep, and the flour burns. He works by lantern light, deep within the stone belly of the mill, the air thick with dust. The baker does not see him. The farmer does not thank him. But every loaf of bread owes him something. The bone carver, a narrow workshop lit by a single slit of a window. A man carves bone. He uses knives the length of fingers and files like needles. His materials come from oxen and sheep, sometimes birds. He shapes them into combs, buttons, dice, and needle. Cases. His touch is careful. His voice almost never heard. Some say bone carving is unlucky. Others say it is sacred bone, being what remains when all else is gone. His wares are bought by those who cannot afford ivory, but still want something beautiful. His tools never rust. His fingers never rest. The city sleeps, and so do its tradesmen. So we walk back through the streets slower now. The tradesmen have vanished into their corners. The kilns are cold. The oil lamps gutter. The bells have stopped. But the work remains. The walls still stand. The lamps still burn. The bread still rises. The wool still binds. Because someone, somewhere, once did the quiet work. The grave lantern keeper, there is one more figure known only to a few. He works alone, just beyond the city gates where the cemetery lies. His name is forgotten in the rolls, but his presence lingers. He is the grave lantern keeper. Each evening, he lights a row of small clay lamps set in iron niches along the edge of the burial. ground flickering flames meant not for the dead, but for the living. They do not shine brightly, they do not last until dawn, but they offer comfort to those passing by or pausing to remember. His hands are never clean. His tunic smells of oil and damp earth, but his work is careful, and his steps are slow. He does not speak to the mourners. He nods, lights the lamp, and disappears into the fog. And when you pass that way and see the little glow in the darkness, you know someone still tends the memory. Someone still keeps watch. The gentle fold into silence, and now the trades of the city fall quiet. The hammers are stilled. The lime has cooled. The ropes have slackened. The leeches float in their clay, hot, undisturbed, that the lanterns burn softly in their brackets. The shutters are drawn. The bells wait for morning. You've walked far tonight through alley and chapel, Guildhall and Kill, counting room and tower. You've passed beneath spires and smoke. You've watched hands at work, and you've stood still as the rhythm of the city pulsed around you. Now even that rhythm fades. All that remains is breath, a slow, steady breath, the kind taken when the work is finished, and it is closing reflection. Segment 5. The trades may be forgotten, but their traces remain dot in stone, in cloth, in combs carved from bone, in the grain of plaster, in the bell that tolls, though the ringer sleeps, and just as the city rests, so may you, because though you did not walk those streets, you remembered them, and in remembering, you honored them. Sleep well. Let the city dream. Let the world grow quiet. Let the old trades sleep, and let your mind drift with them. The roads between medieval travel without glory. Before the road begins, imagine yourself in a stone city, its gatehouse tall and shadowed, as morning mist curls around its towers. Today, you leave Dot. You are not a noble on a fine horse. You are not part of a caravan or royal retinue. You are a common traveller, a wool merchant's assistant, a wandering friar, or a pilgrim walking toward some distant shrine. Your pack is heavy. Your shoes are stiff. The city bells have just finished their morning peal. The road ahead is long, and everything you need must be carried on your back. The feel of the road, the medieval road, is not paved. It is not marked. It is a living thing. Rutted, muddy, ever-changing Dot. In dry seasons, it is dust. In wet seasons, it is thick, sucking clay. Wagons creak along its worst parts. Horses avoid its edges. Peddlers walk slowly, placing each step with care. You see no signs, no milestones, no helpful markers. Instead, you follow memory, word of mouth, and the occasional wayside shrine, a carved cross or a painted stone. Where other travelers have paused, the people of the road are not alone. The road has its own cast of characters, not residents, but constant return. A pilgrim wrapped in a dusty cloak, his palms smooth from holding a staff. A mendicant friar, barefoot and silent, collecting alms with eyes cast downward. A tinker pulling a small cart of pots and broken blades, offering to mend in exchange. For bread, a messenger, grim and quick-footed, carrying a sealed letter to a distant lord. A gleeman, strumming a lute and singing low tunes in exchange for a space near the fire. You speak little to one another. You share a fire when you can. You trust slowly, but in silence there is camaraderie, whether without shelter the road does. not care for the weather. When it rains, the path becomes thick with sucking mud. Your cloak, once dry and rough, clings to your skin, heavy with water. Shoes soak through, feet blister. The wind sneaks beneath your collar. When the wind rises, it brings grit to your eyes. And when the sun beats down, there is no shade, just a flat, pale road and heat rising from the dirt, like a wavering veil. There are no milestones to mark your progress, only the occasional tree or a distant church steeple that grows imperceptibly, closer, then suddenly gone behind a hill. Still, you walk, because walking is what the road requires. The inn, if you can afford it, when the light fades and the dust turns to shadow. You look for shelter, a flicker of smoke, a roofline behind, a grove of trees, a wooden sign hanging from a crooked beam. An inn, if you're fortunate. Inside, it is dark but warmer than the road. The fire is already lit. The smell is a mixture of smoke, stewed meat, sweat, and old ale. If you have coin, you pay for bread, a bowl of beans, perhaps a mug of watered wine. If not, you may offer a story, a song, or a strong back to help stack. Firewood beds are shared, straw-filled sacks in a loft, close to the rafters. You lie still, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, their breath warm, their dreams unknown. You hear mice beneath the floor, a snore, a cough, a whisper, but also the creak of beams above and the wind outside the shutters. And you are safe for tonight. When there is no input, not every night brings a roof. Sometimes the road runs long between towns. You find yourself beneath trees, or beside a hedge, or within a shepherd's abandoned lean -. You build a small fire if you dare. You draw your cloak around you, and you listen. Owls, wind, the drip of water from a leaf. Your own heartbeat. There are bandits in these woods, but you are small, poor, no threat. Sleep comes lightly, like a hesitant guest, and when the first light comes, you walk again. Dangers along the way. The road is not kind. There are no guards, no patrols, only rumors. A bridge washed out in the next valley, a toll demanded by men with knives and no lord, a fever spreading in the southern villages, a forest path where people vanish without sound. But you go on, because most of what you fear never arrives, and what does passes to. You learn to walk quietly, to greet strangers with a nod, not a word, to keep your coin close, and to move always toward the next bell tower, the next shrine, the next sign of people, the solitude of the road. But, above all, the road is lonely, and it is in that loneliness that you begin to notice things you missed before. The way the moss grows on the north side of trees, the curl of the road after each rain, the flicker of a bird's wing before you hear its song, the faint, sour scent of wheat left too long in the sun. You begin to know the land, not as a map, but as a companion. You stop expecting company. You stop rushing. You move at the speed of the land. The pilgrimage. Some do not travel for trade or message or profit. Some walk for penance, for healing, for hope. They are pilgrims. You recognize them easily. Long cloaks, walking staffs, badges sewn to tunics, a scallop shell, perhaps, or the crossed keys of St. Peter, or the Red Cross of Santiago. They carry little, sometimes nothing but a small sack and a prayer. They walk not toward gold, but toward grace. The road does not ease for them, but they do not complain, for each step is part of the ritual, each ache in the foot, each cold night, each shallow breath climbing a hillside, is an offering. When they stop, they kneel. When they pass a shrine, they touch it with reverence. They do not speak often, but when they do, their voices are quiet, and their eyes hold stillness. The wayside shrine, at the edge of a clearing, tucked into a wall of stacked stone, sits a wayside shrine. It is small, just a niche carved into the rock. Inside, a painted wooden virgin, faded, weather-worn dot around her pebbles, feathers, dried flowers left by other hands. You stop, not because you are religious, but because you feel you should. You press your fingers to the stone. It is cool. It reminds you that others have passed this way, that the road remembers. You leave a coin, or a leaf, or a silent thought, and then you walk on the messenger's burden. Not all travelers carry burdens. You can see a royal messenger walks quickly behind you. He wears leather, carries a satchel sealed in wax. He does not rest often. Inside his pouch may be news of war, or marriage, or land dispute, or death. He cannot afford to be delayed, but he is no soldier, just a man on foot, with no more power than the letter he holds, and so he passes silently. Another figure on the road arrivals. Sometimes after days or weeks, you reach your destination. You cross a final ridge, and below you lies a town. Its rooftops tilted in the light, smoke curling from chimneys, a bell tower rising like a finger pointing toward the sky. The gate is open. The guards nod. You pass into the narrow streets. The smell of bread, the creak of wagons, the warm sigh of the wind shifting between buildings and suddenly the road is behind you. You are no longer a traveler. You are a visitor, a guest, a soul at rest. You find a bench. You remove your shoes. You drink water from a wooden cup, and for the first time in many nights, you do not dream of walking a world behind you. You have walked far tonight, through city streets and candlelit guild halls, past plague-ridden alleys and silent chapels, across muddy roads and into forgotten trades. You've seen what it was like to live, toil, and endure. In a medieval city, not in legend, but in rhythm, not in battles, but in bread, not in drama, but in dust, routine, and quiet purpose. You were there. You swept the floor of a thatched workshop. You closed the ledger of a merchant's day. You lit a lantern at dusk. You placed your palm on a wayside shrine. And now, with each breath, those places fall away. The alleys darken. The bells fall silent. The road disappears into mist. The people you met, merchants, pilgrims, apprentices, rope makers, return to their corners of history. They do not vanish, they rest, and so do you. Time grows soft. There is nothing more to learn tonight. No more steps to take, no more coins to count. Let your thoughts loosen like worn bootlaces. Let your breath fall into the rhythm of the sleeping city. Imagine one final candle, burning low, the scent of beeswax, the scratch of quill fading. To silence, the distant toll of midnight. And then, nothing. Only stillness. Only peace. A gentle farewell. You've journeyed through stone and silence. And now you return, not to the present, but to a deeper quiet, the kind that holds you like a wool cloak. Sleep well. Dream simply, and when you wake, may the world feel a little older, a little softer, a little more sacred. Good night, traveler, and thank you for walking this path